Hello everyone, our topic this week was requested by Sam Conley, Zeno G, and Victor Souza. We're going to go over the storyline for the Xenosaga trilogy. And if I have to explain that there are spoilers for that, you have problems.
Okay, so for any of this to make sense, we've got to go through some world setup. And yes, for those who are familiar with Xenogears or saw our old lore video on it, this series was made by the same people, covers enough similar themes, and has enough similar visuals and character designs that to call the Xenosaga games a spiritual cousin or successor to Xenogears would be a mild understatement. You can taste the same writers all over these games. On to the series itself. The Xenosaga versus reality is split into two halves, the upper domain and the lower domain. The upper domain is home to the Yudo, a being formed of energy waves that is of vast intelligence, will, and power. Presumably, other such beings exist in the upper domain, but they are never discussed, because, to the best of our knowledge, the Yudo is the only such being to have interacted with the lower domain. The lower domain is split into two smaller halves, the imaginary domain and the real domain. The real domain is the perceivable universe and everything in it. The imaginary domain is the spiritual half of all of that. Everything that exists in the real domain exists in the imaginary domain, anchored by its real domain counterpart. In essence, all living things exist simultaneously in both dimensions, the body in the real domain and the consciousness or soul in the imaginary domain. However, when the body dies in the real domain, the soul doesn't disappear. It continues to exist within the imaginary domain, but is now untethered. Because of this, all of the souls of everything, predominantly humans, there are no known aliens in Xenosaga, and animal or plant souls are never discussed, from the beginning of time still exist within the imaginary domain. Over time, however, the vast majority of souls eventually join together and assimilate into the collective unconscious, which is really just what it sounds like, a vast amalgamation of nearly all of those who have come before, slowly fusing into a singular entity.
Occasionally, though, a soul rejects this assimilation process, unwilling to lose its sense of personal identity. Presumably, this can happen for a number of reasons, but the one primarily addressed in the games is fear. Fear of losing that sense of who and what you are to a collective, fear of disappearing, and, ironically, considering that they are retreating from being within a group, a fear of loneliness. Eventually, such unabsorbed souls become creatures known as Gnosis, more on them in a bit. Though the laws of nature apply differently to the real and imaginary domains, there is one similar constant between them. Technically, they can both be filled to capacity, and if either the imaginary or real domains overflow, reality breaks down and the entire lower domain collapses. Gnosis seem to take up more metaphysical space than the collective unconscious, and so contribute to this overpopulation problem. And, being half of reality, if the lower domain collapses, so does the upper domain. To help combat the possibility of collapse, the universe itself seems to have manifested 4 beings to act as moderators or mediators to ensure that the universe continues to function. 2 partner beings, who have a handful of names but whom we're going to call Chaos and Mary Magdalene. Yes, that one. This series has a lot of weird quasi-religious components woven into it. Chaos is a sort of living failsafe mechanism. He can channel and accumulate energy such that if the scales of reality begin to tip, he automatically destroys the real domain, leaving the imaginary domain intact, which preserves enough of reality to keep the universe as a whole from collapsing. But, we're all dead. Also, how does that not flood the imaginary domain? Are our souls just vaporized in the process? Anyway, Mary is Chaos's control key, as he can only access his full power with her help. As a final failsafe, Mary herself has a sort of control key in the form of Mary's Maiden. Without the Maiden, Mary can't fully access her power, and without her full power, Chaos can't access his. Finally, the real domain manifested Wilhelm, whose entire reason for being is to ensure the continued existence of the real domain. As you can imagine, this sort of puts him at inherent odds with the other 3.
So, back in ancient times, while trying to help steer humanity towards good things, Mary and Chaos inadvertently helped accelerate the buildup of chaos energy, leading to the imminent destruction of reality. This was in spite of direct opposition from Wilhelm, who saw the danger they posed and had long worked against them because of it. Mary and Chaos didn't want the real domain destroyed any more than Wilhelm did, though, so they constructed the Zarathustra, a device which was designed with the intent of saving reality, somehow. Unfortunately, it failed, somehow. No, really, they're incredibly vague on these 2 points. Regardless, since that didn't work, Mary, with her maiden, divided Chaos's power into 12 artifacts in order to keep him from overloading and detonating the universe. This process obviously weakened him, but either he is an idiot, or it also seemed to affect his memory, as he no longer knew what his remaining power was meant for in his weakened state. Splitting Chaos's energy like that proved too much for Mary, however, and she died as a result, living just long enough to witness her maiden die as well.
In the aftermath, Wilhelm was left opposed only by a severely weakened Chaos and their supporters. So he took control of the Zarathustra and proceeded to play an incredible game of chess, with all of humanity as his pieces and the encroaching destruction of reality as his opponent. Over the next several thousand years, Wilhelm maneuvered events in such a way that he was able to reattach Mary's soul to a body, get Shion Chaos to the Zarathustra, and ensure that Mary's reincarnated maiden was there to make all their powers work. Yes, the maiden reincarnates. Also yes, this seems to be a unique happenstance, which is really weird when you consider that spiritual overpopulation is part of the problem that threw all of these events into motion. If the spirit world getting too crowded is the problem, and reincarnation is a thing that can happen, why doesn't everyone just reincarnate by default? That's just us. By this point in time, Wilhelm had made an adjustment to the Zarathustra. It could now be used to reset time back to some point much closer to the beginning of humanity, giving all of the human race a chance to live again, literally rewinding everything to start at year X and proceed forward from there. Wilhelm couldn't make it work. He still needed to convince Mary and Chaos to power the thing, but as far as he was concerned, Wilhelm had found the only viable way to preserve humanity and the real domain. We don't know how many times it has happened, but we do know that Wilhelm convinced Mary and Chaos to go through with it and reset time. Again, and again, and again. Each use of the Zarathustra literally rewinding time back to some unspecified point long in the past to let humanity live and grow again. Each time, everyone's memories were wiped, including those of Wilhelm, Chaos, Mary, and the Maiden, and so, with slight variations caused by some sort of underlying current in humanity's collective unconscious, as well as Yudo's watching things happen over and over. With their memories wiped, Chaos and Mary continued causing problems, continued building the Zarathustra, and Wilhelm continued masterminding humanity until he could get it all reset again. Over and over again.
The Xenosaga games take place in the most recent iteration of this cycle, set thousands of years in the future when humanity has colonized the far-flung reaches of space, using the imaginary domain to facilitate both FTL travel and a crazy Matrix-like internet and communication system, all of which is collectively known as UMN, or Unus Mundus Network, which we're told translates roughly from Latin to be One World Network. Throughout history, the Gnosis have periodically spawned into the real domain and caused havoc here and there, which they're adept at since they attack anything in real space indiscriminately and are huge cheaters. A Gnosis is a creature of the imaginary domain. As such, they don't correctly interact with the real domain. They can attack people and objects in the real domain, but conventional real domain weaponry passes right through them. Because reasons. In response to this, humanity eventually developed a method of producing energy waves that cement the Gnosis' connection to real space. The Gnosis can still harm things in real space while affected by the waves, but they are themselves also rendered vulnerable to conventional weaponry.
14 years prior to the start of Xenosaga 1, Shion, the series protagonist and reincarnation of Mary's maiden, suffered a profound moment of despair after witnessing the murder of both her parents. Shion was 8 years old at the time, and the psychological trauma of witnessing such an event needn't be explained. However, what made this particular event extra problematic was Shion herself, and her proximity to an artifact called the Zohar, which is essentially a giant golden 2001: A Space Odyssey tablet. The Zohar is one of 3 direct links from the real domain to the Yudo, the other 2 being Yudo's eyes through which he views the lower domain. Unlike the eyes, though, the Zohar is a direct link to Yudo and his power. Due to Shion's nature as Mary's maiden, as well as her biological heritage, she was one of a handful of people with the ability to tap into the Zohar, access Yudo, its will, and its power. In this moment of intense sadness, Shion accidentally activated the Zohar and released a Gnosis swarm of heretofore unparalleled size upon her world. Eventually, those Gnosis were stopped, at the cost of the planet. Sort of, with a comparative handful of the planet's population escaping, Shion and her brother included.
Ever since that incident, Gnosis attacks have been on the rise, and, with rare exceptions, the merest touch of a Gnosis either turns the victim into salt or transforms them into a Gnosis themselves. It was because of these escalating attack numbers that the aforementioned method of combating Gnosis was developed. Fast forward 14 years, and we find Shion acting as the lead scientist in the development of an android called kos-mos, which was ostensibly designed as a premier anti-Gnosis weapon. However, by this point in history, Wilhelm had insinuated himself into nearly every facet of human society. He was a one-man Illuminati, with fingers in every pie, including acting as the CEO for the company Shion worked for. While it's true that kos-mos was designed as a Gnosis killing machine, that was her secondary purpose. Her primary purpose was to function as the real domain vessel for Mary to eventually awaken into. To this end, Wilhelm had used incredibly questionable methods to ensure that Shion worked closely on kos-mos's development, knowing that by making Shion close with Mary's vessel, their bond would eventually facilitate both Mary's awakening as well as Shion's.
Over the course of the 3 games, Shion and kos-mos are eventually thrown into play through a seemingly random Gnosis attack, but from there end up joining together with a colorful cast of characters and proceed to slowly piece together all of the information we've presented in this video so far, culminating in their fight to stop Wilhelm from resetting time once again, certain that they can instead change the course of the future and maintain the stability of the universe without forcing everyone throughout history to live the same, often terrible, lives over and over again. The themes of hope and the ability of the collective will to enact change are recurring themes throughout the games. Along the way, Shion grows from a horribly broken human being to someone with a healthy, or at least finally healing, psyche. Starting out initially as a damaged girl who doesn't want to help herself, before sinking even lower, becoming angry at the world for being so cruel to her and hers, bemoaning the fact that she's alone in the world. Very Gnosis-like, and this despite the fact that the game has a core roster of 6 other characters who love and stand by her. Before finally, literally at the end of the final game, beginning to figure out who she is, what she needs, and what she deserves in order to be a healthy, happy human being, and by extension, what she can do to help everyone else.
The series culminates in the final confrontation between Shion, her companions, and Wilhelm. Gathered at the Zarathustra, Wilhelm believed he had every card in play. Chaos was there, and generally let others do the deciding. kos-mos was an android body incapable of disobeying him, with the soul of a woman he knew would see saving humanity as better than watching them die, and Shion was present, which really was all that was required of her. But several things went awry. First and foremost, in their time growing to know and care for each other, the bond of love and friendship between Shion and kos-mos had become incredibly strong. So strong, in fact, that it had altered both kos-mos's slowly growing programming and Mary's reintegrating soul. The being that was formed was something new, part Mary and part kos-mos. As such, she was more willing to stand and fight with Shion, and perhaps more importantly, was capable of disobeying Wilhelm's orders. Shion inspired the rest of her fellows to stand against Wilhelm as well, including Chaos, who had seen in his new companions the will required for a brighter future that didn't have to end or be reset. With everyone, including Wilhelm's second-in-command, against him, Wilhelm was defeated, the out-of-control Zarathustra was dealt with, and they enacted their plan. kos-mos, Chaos, and one of Yudo's eyes stayed and used the power of the Zohar to transport everything, including all of the Gnosis, within a massive chunk of space to the location of Earth, which had been long lost to time thanks to sci-fi shenanigans. In the aftermath of everything that happened, the UMN was destroyed, leaving humanity unable to use FTL travel or FTL communications. As such, the game closes with about half of Shion's compatriots either dead, gone, or staying behind to help put humanity back together, while she and 2 of her other companions fly off into space at sublight speeds in search of Earth, where they hope to find Chaos, kos-mos, and the solution to keeping the universe from collapsing. The game ends on a surprisingly hopeful note, with Shion and company in better spirits than they'd been in a while the final shots during the credits show the damaged remains of kos-mos floating towards what is probably supposed to be Earth. Comforted by the words of Chaos as he affirms that the 2 of them are still needed, still wanted by the universe, and would thus survive.
And that's basically the story of Xenosaga, the tale of a girl, a robot, and the fight against fate. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like and maybe share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see in the future, do like Sam Connolly, Xeno G, and Victor Souza, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore, let's play, or other, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons,
signing off.
Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more like it, hit that subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, click the link on the left.
Thank you to all of our patrons for making these videos possible.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.